Hey, how's everyone doing today? Jay here from Square Pegs, and today I am responding to a video that I was tagged in a couple weeks ago by my friends Scott and Jen over at Retro Rivals. Please be sure to go over to their channel and check it out. Subscribe right away because they're fantastic. So I'm supposed to give you my 5 games that I keep coming back to, and I'm going to do that, and I will also take from Scott and Jen and actually put an honorable mention in here because I can never do just 5. It's not easy when you have a ton of games to play. But I am adding the added difficulty bonus on here because I talk about Nintendo all the time on this channel. It is probably the thing I talk about more than anything else. I wanted to make sure I didn't just stick to Nintendo consoles. I wanted to kind of spread the love a little bit, so I'm going to be talking about Xbox, Sony, and Sega on this one as well. And up first is one of my favorite RPGs from the Xbox 360, and that is Dragon Age Origins Ultimate Edition. Dragon Age is a really interesting title for me on a personal level. It's a game that I'd been at a fever pitch for when it was announced, and it combined 2 of my absolute favorite things, high fantasy and BioWare RPG games. And the scene was set. It was a bloody, violent, and deep title full of memorable characters, fun combat, and interesting lore. All that's great, of course, but the thing that makes this memorable for me, and probably why it's something that I hold so dearly to, is that it was the last game I ever bought when I worked at EA. The day before it released, I got called into HR and I was told I had an option. They were letting 1,400 people go worldwide, and I could either relocate to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, uprooting my entire family and being demoted in the process, or I could just leave the company entirely. Taking this as a sign that my career in the game industry was coming to an end, I decided to leave. But before I did, I had to stay on for at least a week while my severance package was drafted and we started working on transition plans. And when Dragon Age launched, I remember buying it and thinking that this was my last hurrah and that it would be the last benefit I ever had from working in games. Of course, I've parlayed that game career into 20 years in quality assurance and software. But at the time, I didn't think that way. For the next year, it was legitimately the only game I would play. I didn't want anything to do with any games, and the only thing that dragged me out of my doldrums was Dragon Age. And to this day, it's a franchise I still enjoy. While Part 2 was flawed, I actually felt that the characters in the game were more memorable, and I felt that the Dragon Age Inquisition game that released on the PS4 and the Xbox One was ultimately a really fun game. But neither one really hold a candle to the original. I've gone back and I've played it numerous times in the 13 years since its initial release, and I see myself continuing to go back to the world of Ferelden to fight the hordes of Darkspawn along Shale, Alistair, Morrigan, and Leliana. It plays very similarly to a lot of BioWare's titles at the time, with familiar nods to both Knights of the Old Republic and Jade Empire, while also borrowing heavily from Mass Effect. Honestly, either of those late 2000s BioWare titles would have been a fantastic conclusion here, as both Dragon Age and Mass Effect are some of my favorite games ever, but Dragon Age gets the nod because of how much I appreciate it for bringing me back to gaming after I felt games weren't something I wanted to give time or energy to anymore. Alright, so honorable mention is out of the way. Dragon Age is a wonderful game, one of my favorite RPGs ever. I think it sets such a wonderful stage of what was to come, sort of with Dragon Age 2 and definitely with Dragon Age Inquisition. Cannot wait for Dragon Age 4, but let's get into the top 5 now, shall we? And the one that I'm kicking things off with is one of my favorite Dreamcast games. I wish I still had the CD case for it. Unfortunately, it just lives in a folder, but right now, we are talking about one of the best fighting games ever. Power Stone. I vividly remember the first time I saw Power Stone. But to tell you that story, I need to tell you about the magical place that I discovered it in. Rocky's Replay. I wish the footage I'm showing you here from Treasure X Star's channel was of the original configuration of the arcade, not its second location, because the original location was in a building a quarter mile from the front door of my apartment. It was a wonderland. A cramped former restaurant that was gutted and turned into a magical arcade experience. Home of the 25-cent hot dog of questionable origin, Rocky's always had the latest and greatest arcade machines to try out. And I would stop there frequently as I'd walk home from my early morning coffee shop job. I was a fighting game fiend, and I would stop at Rocky's almost every day to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Street Fighter 3. But one day I walked in and saw for the first time the gloriousness that was the Power Stone cabinet. I think I spent 2 or 3 hours playing that day, trading off and watching other people play, putting my quarters up on the cabinet, learning different techniques from their fights, and just being in awe of this incredible new 3D arena fighter from Capcom. And when it released later that year on the Dreamcast, oh my god, it was heaven. This was a frequent game utilized in our Friday night fight tournaments, and it's something that was just so damn captivating and enjoyable because of how completely different it was from anything else we were playing at the time. To this day, I still find it to be one of the most satisfying fighting game experiences out there. The characters are memorable, the fighting is fun, the specials are great, the weapons are amazing, and the design of the world is picture perfect. This truly is the series I want most for Capcom to revisit and re-release. I was hoping that we would get some in the Capcom Fighting Collection, we would see Power Stone or Power Stone 2 in there, but I'm hoping that if we are lucky enough to get a Capcom Fighting Collection 2, they're put in there. I think the games are that good. I think they are the upper echelon of Capcom fighting games, and I think more people deserve the opportunity to play them.
Yeah, so Power Stone, if you have not played it, it is legit one of the best multiplayer experiences out there, one of the best single-player experiences out there, and just a fantastic game. One of my favorite fighters ever. I loved it in arcades. I loved it on the Dreamcast. I wish that this franchise hadn't died with Power Stone 2 because I honestly think it is one of the freshest fighting games ever and just such a breath of fresh air that Capcom desperately needed. But let's go on to the next one, shall we? And this is a game that I have talked about countless times on the channel, and this is something that I have played religiously for, almost 30 years now, and that is NHL 95.
NHL 95 is, without question, my most played game in my life. I have played countless hours of NHL 95 since it initially released, both at home on my Sega Genesis, at my friend David's home on his SNES, and countless other emulation machines throughout the years. I have played so many different seasons of this game using my favorite team, the Boston Bruins, as well as other favorites like the Vancouver Canucks, Philadelphia Flyers, Quebec Nordique, and the Hartford Whalers. Everything that NHL 95 did is what I use as a benchmark to compare other hockey games to this day. The game captured perfectly what was the essence of my favorite sport, showcasing the speed, power, and hard-hitting violence of the game. I've played nearly every version of NHL that EA has produced, and I don't know that they've ever gotten it more correct than they have here. Sure, later releases saw additions like Be a Pro and Franchise Mode, but all subsequent releases have been chasing the beautiful and perfect simplicity that was the gameplay of 95. There's a certain kind of nostalgia that definitely impacts me here, of course, but I look at things like later versions of Madden and the Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy PGA series that EA produced, and I see games that have had massive improvements to their overall gameplay. Meanwhile, nothing the NHL series does feels like it's really made any market improvement, because of how good this game was. A couple of years ago, EA released NHL 94 Rewind, an updated version of an equally excellent game which included modern rosters and teams. And I really wish they had continued to use other older games and release budget-friendly digital-only games like that, as I would have loved to have seen modern take on NHL 95 with today's players and team bases, and maybe include something like a 16-bit friendly version of Franchise or GM mode. And truth be told, NHL 95 is probably here as an analog for the entire NHL series, if I'm being honest, as I've played so many of them, but its inclusion over the 30 other entries in the series shows just how incredible of a title it really is.
So why NHL 95? What makes NHL 5 so special? Well, to me, it's just because I love it so much. It is the game that I kind of cut my teeth on. I loved the first NHL, I loved NHLPA, I loved 94, but this one right here is the one that's special to me. This is one I have memories of with my friend David. This is the one that I put hundreds of hours into when I was a kid, and I still play it regularly today. I still play it as an adult. I think it's that good of a game. I think it's the best NHL game EA has ever made. All right, I'm going to stick with sports now, but this is a little bit different kind of sports, and this is going to be more extreme sports, and this is something that everyone I know who has played this game just adores it because of how quality it is, and that is SSX Tricky.
You're welcome to Garibaldi.
Straight up, for someone who has never, ever done the sport in his life, I love snowboarding games. The Cool Borders franchise was one of my most played series on the PS1. The 1080 franchise from Nintendo is one of my most beloved IPs that Nintendo has jettisoned into the sun. Hell, I even love Steep and Riders Republic from Ubisoft. But none, hold a candle to any of the SSX series, with the #1 title being SSX Tricky. Tricky elevates everything the original game did, and it adds so much content. New trick styles, more riders, more boards, more outfits, huge mountains, incredible courses, fun music, and amazing voice acting from people like Lucy Liu, Billy Zane, Oliver Platt, and Macy Gray make this one of the most fully realized and enjoyable gaming experiences I've ever had. The game just works, and is one of the most easily accessible and enjoyable racing experiences of anything I've ever played. One of the unsung aspects of the game is the rivalry system that's in place. If you race a clean race with someone, they'll start to like you more and treat you more favorably. But if you race them aggressively, collide with someone repeatedly, and generally be a nuisance to them, they'll retaliate in future races and make it significantly harder for you to successfully complete races. It's a balancing act of trying to maintain order in what is an inherently chaotic game, and I love that it can be so impactful to your experience. There's so much to love about SSX Tricky, not the least of which is the fact that it's just so easy to pick up and play. If you don't want to do tricks, you can just run it as a straight-up race, but if you'd rather focus on big air, grinds, and huge trick combos, you can do that too. I come back to the entire SSX series regularly, but Tricky was the one that introduced me to the series and made me a believer.
Not only is this game just fantastic, not only does it have incredible stunts in the game that you're able to play, amazing career modes, fantastic unlockables, tons of characters that you're able to play as, different boards that you're able to get, costumes, the whole nine. Like, the game's soundtrack is also incredible. I could not play any of it on this video because it's all licensed music, but artists like Run DMC, Mixmaster Mike, Skank, there's so many amazing musical artists in here, and that's even before we get to the regular composed music for the game as well, with all the different character themes. Everything in this game sounds incredible. It plays wonderfully. It's the perfect version of what a snowboarding game should be, and it's the best EA Sports big game ever released. Next up, I could show you any number of games from the Uncharted series. I fell in love with it the first time I saw it. It's a brand new version of Indiana Jones. It's a witty game. It's fun. It's smartly designed. It's beautiful to look at. It's great to play. The storylines are wonderful, and the voice acting is incredible. But the one that hooked me, and the one that I always go back to, is this guy right here, Uncharted 4.
So who do you think these guys are?
Uncharted for me was one of those kind of faraway franchises that I admired, but I never really had a chance to play it. I didn't own a PS3 until years after I'd owned a PS4, so when the series first released, I thought it looked amazing, but as an Xbox 360 owner, it was way out of my wheelhouse. But the PS4, on the other hand, that was right up my alley. I'd been excited about the console as my friend Nate was telling me about it at the school we worked at, and I decided that if I saw a game I was really interested in, I'd pick one up. So when the fourth game was announced, as well as the special edition PS4 Slim featuring Nate Drake on it, I was sold. Booting up the game was a revelation. The introductory level where you play as young Nate escaping from school to go be with his brother Sam immediately had me invested in the characters. Sam's quote-unquote death as Nate, Sam, and Rafe escaped from jail was a gut punch. I'd just met this character. Everything about this game was a home run for me. Nolan North, Emily Rose, Troy Baker, and Richard McGonigal delivered some of the best performances I've ever experienced in a video game as Nate, Elena, Sam, and Sully. And that's before we even get to Warren Cole and Laura Bailey as the heavies of the game, Rafe and Nadine. I was completely enthralled with both the story and the acting in the game, to say nothing of the excellent gameplay, gorgeous visuals, and exciting combat. I'm showing you here the PS5 version of the game, and it's only been boosted by the incredible power of that machine. Uncharted 4 has become comfort food for me. When I feel like playing something but I don't really know what to play, I can pop this game in and instantly be transported into a world of swashbuckling high adventure, treasure hunting, and a band of lovable miscreants that can't help but fall into situations that are fantastical and beyond belief. Truth be told, I love the entire series. All 5 games are remarkable experiences and testaments to the storytelling Naughty Dog is capable of. But Uncharted 4, Thief's End, is the one I always come back to.
Keep me updated.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I know for so many people, Uncharted 2 is their number one game, and Uncharted 2 is a spectacular title, don't get me wrong, I love it. But Uncharted 4 for me was the first game I played, so there's a lot of kind of nostalgia bias here. I hadn't played any of the previous Uncharteds. I didn't own a PS3 until well after I owned a PS4. So I had never played it up until that point. So for me, the first one I played was Uncharted 4, and I just loved the story of Nate and Sam and Sully. It's just, I think the ending kind of had a little bit to do with it as well. Going into it and knowing that this was the last game we were going to get with Nate Drake, although fingers crossed that isn't the case and we get more down the road. The ending and the epilogue of the story, and I don't want to spoil it even though the game is older at this point, it's emotionally impactful, and it was something that I go back to probably every year I play it. I would say maybe every 2 years I go back and play it, but it's something that I just thoroughly enjoy. I'm playing it again on the PS5 right now, and to me, it's the ultimate in the series. Uncharted 4 is just that special to me. All right, and the final one from a series that has just captured my mind and is my personal favorite Sony exclusive franchise, and that is the original Ratchet & Clank.
When the PlayStation 2 launched, I didn't pick one up. I was perfectly happy to play my friend Chris's machine, while I eventually played my Dreamcast and my PS1. There just wasn't enough for me to get excited about outside of Tekken Tag Tournament and a few other titles. I didn't really like the design of the original machine. It looked like bricks. So for years, I didn't play anything on the PS2. I mean, I eventually got a GameCube and an original Xbox, but the PS2 just didn't interest me. Until Ratchet & Clank released. While a lot of folks were swooning over Jak and Daxter, Ratchet & Clank was the one that caught my attention, and I was a hard sell. 3D action games weren't my cup of tea at the time, so I kind of wrote most of them off. But there was just something about that Lombax and his robot pal that intrigued me. Within a few weeks of each other, both the Slimline PS2 and the first Ratchet & Clank game released, and that had me sold. I loved the design of the Slim PS2. But even with that, it would still be years until I got the console in 2005. And the first game I grabbed was the greatest hits release of Ratchet & Clank. My amazing wife got me the Slim PS2, and I was just about to take a bunch of PTO from my work at EA as we had just delivered a game. I played Ratchet & Clank for hours every day. And those hours of gameplay led me to put the game in the upper echelon of PlayStation titles, a place it rightfully deserves and continues to deliver upon. I mean, Rift Apart was my game of the year for a reason last year. I loved the creative world building, amazing visuals, hilarious weapons, and fantastic gameplay that Ratchet & Clank offered, and it was because of that game that I went as far in on the PS2 as I did. And while I might not play this particular copy of the game as often as I could, and truth be told, it's kind of the representative of every Ratchet & Clank game, I enjoy all the ones I've played. There's something still very charming and exciting about going back to that original game and playing it with a DualShock 2. I play this probably every 2 or 3 years, and it's always one of my favorite gaming experiences when I go back to it.
So why the original Ratchet & Clank? Well, there's a lot that went into it. The voice acting is amazing, the action in the game is spectacular, the design, the worlds are just gorgeous to behold and so much fun to be a part of, and everything's alive. Like, it feels like a fully realized universe. It's not just like level to level to level. There's so much that goes into it that I just go back to it all the time, and this is kind of a benchmark for the whole series because I don't just play this one. I will be honest. This is kind of cheating here because this is kind of the stand-in for the entire series, kind of like Uncharted is, I guess, really, but with this original Ratchet & Clank, this is the one that captured me. This is the one I went back to constantly and the one that I played repeatedly. And here's something I really like about it that I want to show you that just is incredible and one of my favorite things that Sony did. On the inside, you got a poster. That's great. I love the poster, but I love that the instruction manual looks like blueprints. Like, it's such a clever little touch and such a fantastic attention to detail and such a wonderful way for them to present this that is true to the lore in the game and true to the way the game is presented. I love Ratchet & Clank, and I will play any single one that I have the opportunity to do so. There you have it, the games I keep coming back to, the ones I can't get enough of, the ones I always want to play, and I'm going to tag 3 people. First up, I want to hear from Game Dad. Chris, let me know what are the games you keep coming back to. I'm also going to tag Generation Pixel. Buddy, you have such an amazing Sony library. I need to know what are the games from Sony that you keep coming back to. And finally, I'm going to be tagging my friend Ren from Hallowed Be Thy Game. Ren, let me know the games you keep coming back to. You are a JRPG master. You are the lore aficionado. You are the guy that knows more about RPGs than anybody. I want to see what are the 5 RPGs that you keep playing. Big thanks to my patrons you guys are seeing on screen right now. Couldn't do this without you. And if you dug this, check out the playlist up here right now for more top 5s. Remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.